What's happening, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Crossed Up. Anthony Sanfilippo is here. I'm Bob Wankel. And Anthony, Phillies go down to Miami after a dreadful series against the Pittsburgh Pirates last weekend. They take 3 out of 4, and you should feel good about that. Miami always gives the Phillies a problem. Phillies always struggle down there, it feels like. They create a little distance. They had a winning road trip, and yet here we are on Friday morning before the Phils get set to play the Kansas City Royals, the big bad Royals, for 3 games in South Philadelphia this weekend. And I guess I kind of feel like, I'm not down on them. I'm not really up on them. I just sort of feel like, okay, like they went out, their trade deadline acquisition throws 8 innings. He was good. I just sort of feel like, yeah, I guess we'll see. Like they're probably going to beat up the Royals. They'll probably beat up the Nationals, and they'll start to climb 13, 14 games over, and that's going to look and feel good. But, man, like, I guess, you know why I'm like a little bit measured here rather than being like, how about them Phils? Like, they can't hit, Anthony. They still can't hit. And I know that they scored 8 runs or whatever it was on Wednesday night. Like, that was a bogus 8 runs. Like, they left like 6 runs on the table Wednesday night. This team cannot hit. Are they ever going to hit? Please make me feel better.
Well, I think I'll tell you why I think you're going to see them hit a little bit. And I only say a little bit because I don't think it's going to be anything consistent. But, I said I would reassess it after the trade deadline. And I, went through and I started looking at every team that's like in competition and looking at the calendars and looking at the schedules. The Philly schedule is even easier than I thought. It's not just that it's a lot of home games. It's a lot of games against teams that are no good. And teams, when you looked at this schedule initially and you saw a bunch of games in September against the Cardinals and the Mets, and you thought those are going to be tough games. And now you look at it and say, they should smoke these teams now, right? I mean, so after the trade deadline, I think it changed the Philly schedule even more so for the better. So I think they're going to score because these teams no longer have pitching anymore. I mean, Cardinals never did, but the Mets have no pitching now. Right. So you should score runs against the Mets like you should score runs this weekend against the Royals. And the Nats, you got a bunch against the Nats and even the quote unquote good teams that are coming in, like the Twins and the Angels. I mean, okay, the Angels got a couple pitchers, maybe they can give you a little bit of trouble, but I don't see how this Phillies team is going to continue to struggle to score runs. That doesn't mean in October they won't struggle, because I do think they will. But I do think that you're going to see an uptick in offense because of the opposition.
Okay, so there are obviously many things to talk about. We had the trade deadline. We had some pretty crazy games in Miami, for sure. And I really sort of wish that we recorded after that game Wednesday night, because I would have just liked to have gone through that. The roller coaster of it. How many different people can you blame? Who can you be angry at?
Yeah.
But they go out and they get their sleepy 4-2 win on Thursday to win the series. So I actually kind of want to stay right where you just left it. Talk about, I don't know if they're going to hit in October. I don't think they're going to hit in October. 2 interesting questions for me, because maybe I'm setting myself up for not disappointment. Maybe I'm setting myself up to look like a total idiot, because all along, and not just myself, but you have said the same, I think that this team's going to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Even when they lose 2 out of 3 to the Pirates, or they have that ridiculous game on Wednesday night, and, is Trea Turner broken? I still think that because of the schedule, because of the competition, because of their pitching, like, to their credit, like, that's real. Although that bullpen, we'll get there in a moment, but I still think, and I've always thought, that they will make the playoffs, and maybe they fall flat on their face and they don't. But because I expect them to make the playoffs, and because I'm not even really concerned about their ability to make the playoffs, I keep thinking to myself, if they don't hit, if they continue to do what they've done since really the All-Star break, it's been pretty bad this entire second half so far. Is it possible, like let's pretend and let's project forward, and they get into a playoff series and they're playing, I don't know, the Giants or whoever their matchup would be. And we say, Yeah, I know that they haven't hit for 2.5 months. They haven't really hit all season. We know about the individuals that are slumping or not playing to career norms. But for one weekend or 1 week, can't these guys just rev it up? Like, I almost feel like going into a playoff series, if the Phillies just get in and they continue to do what they've done offensively, I could still talk myself into being like, for a best of three, Nick Castellanos shows up. Trea Turner becomes that guy. Bryce Harper, we know what he does in the postseason. We saw it last year. Like Kyle Schwarber, he's a big moment guy. Stott and Bohm. Like, I can still talk myself into this lineup being a threat, even if they don't pick it up.
Well, they're definitely a threat. And again, it's more because, like you said, it's more because of the pitching. Like that's why they're a threat. Right now, in my mind, in the National League, they have the best staff in the National League right now. Now, the Braves can bring some guys back if they get healthy. Obviously, I think that Atlanta can be ahead of you. Same thing with the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers have a couple guys that if healthy, they could potentially be ahead of you in pitching. And Milwaukee's got really good pitching too, but they're top heavy. If you can get past one or two guys, or even have a good game against one of their better starters, you're probably in good shape against them because their lineup is even worse. So with that being said, I think, in a short series, this is a team that's built for the playoffs, right? It may not be as successful in the regular season as it would be in the playoffs because of how it's built. It's designed to win short series against good teams.
Right.
That's what it's designed for. And so, yes, just getting into the playoffs is a good thing for the Phillies. Yeah, they could be exactly what you just said in a postseason series. I think not only do I think that they're going to get in, I think that they're going to get in easy. I really do. Like I
do too. I think that the Phillies are going to have at least 4 games of cushion between their spot and the fourth team that doesn't get in on the wild card. Like, I don't think that this is a final weekend, got to beat the Mets. Like I think they're just in.
I do too. I just think that, and as a matter of fact, Bob, beginning of the season, you asked me to give you a prediction on number of wins, and I said 91 was the number that I gave you for the Phillies for this year. They might even pass that, not by a lot, by a game or two. I think they could get to 92, 93.
Do you think these
because
next
of the
7 games, was it 3 against Kansas City, 4 against Washington, all at home here?
Yeah,
like
and then 3 more against Minnesota.
Yeah, to me, this is where it sort of is like not a fork in the road. I'm not saying that they need to go 6-1 here. I'm not saying that they will go 6-1 or 7-0. I don't think that they're consistent enough. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up going 4-3 these next 7 games. Like, nothing would surprise me. But my point is that when you go through this little stretch here, I think this is going to dictate whether or not they're a 90-plus win team or they kind of stay more in that mid-80s, like 86, 87, 88 range. Like, if you can put together that streak right now where you go 6-1 and you move to 14 games over, like, then I think that the trajectory changes and there's a little bit more of a ceiling to where they may ultimately get in terms of regular season win total.
So it's a 10-game homestand between the Royals, the Nats, and the Twins. I think 7-3 is happening. I think 8-2 is possible.
Yeah,
I mean, that's when you're looking at these matchups. There's no reason whatsoever to lose a game to Kansas City. This is a sweep. If you lose one of these games, we're gonna be talking about losing the one game to Kansas City, and not the 2 wins. I mean, because that's how bad the Royals are.
Yeah, Kansas City's that bad. Although they had a week, didn't they? Didn't they just rough up the Mets?
Yeah, they did.
So you're getting Kansas City red hot right now. It's kind of like when the A's had their week back in, what was that, June, I guess?
Yeah, and the Phillies played the A's when they were playing well, but they swept them. They still swept them, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's that kind of matchup. Like, to me, I think it's got to be a sweep, and that's why I think 8-2 is realistic in over these next 10 games. But 7-3, if they go 7-3, you take it, and you say that's a good spot to be, because if you go 7-3, now all of a sudden you're 12 games over 500, 13 games over 500, right? I mean, that you're in a good spot at that point. You really are.
Well, they're what right now? Are they 9 over at the moment?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
59 and 50.
So yeah, you put together an 8-2 run here. You're 15 games over 500 at that point.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a place that Phillies teams just have not been, like, in a
mid-August,
long time. Yeah. So, all right. Look, I have one other question before we sort of dive into the week that was, I guess, and looking at the wild card. Do you think it matters? It didn't matter last year, but like, do you think it matters this season that the Phillies play that first series at home? Like, does the number 4 seed matter here? Or are you more dialed into a matchup? Like, hey, I'd rather play this team on the road. Or is it, I think the preference here is to get yourself at Citizens Bank Park.
Well, of course. I mean, obviously, you'll take anything. You'll get into the playoffs. You'll be happy with it. You're in, and you have a chance. I mean, we saw it last year. They didn't have to start at home, and they made the run to the World Series. So it's certainly doable. But would you prefer to play this 3-game series at Citizens Bank Ballpark? Yes. For no other reason, Bob, than we saw what the atmosphere is like. And we heard other teams really were a little bit overwhelmed by, what that atmosphere is like. And especially when you're talking about the teams that they're likely to match up with. These are teams that don't have a lot of playoff experience, that haven't really, been in that kind of environment before with that much on the line. Like, that is a huge advantage, especially in a 3-game series, right? Where you only have one mulligan at most. So I look at that and say, yes, you want to be the number 4 seed. Now, who would they match up with? I mean, you look at these teams. I've been going through the schedules, Bob.
You said that we talked about this on Monday. I'm in full agreement. I did a radio hit with Mike Gill, ESPN 97.3 this week, and he said, "Who are your 3 wild card teams?" And I repeated the 3 that you said the other day.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that could go against my notion of the Cubs and Padres being the other wild card teams is if the Cubs get so hot that they pass Milwaukee and win the division. That's the only. But I think the Cubs are in the play. I think the Cubs are going to make the playoffs.
They bludgeoned that Cincinnati team this week.
Yeah,
and like, for me, what was really impressive is they put up the crazy run totals the first 2 nights, and then you think, like, all right, like, you know, the Reds are pretty good. They'll come back to earth. No, like, knockout blow.
Yeah,
I mean, they sent a message this week.
Yeah, the Cubs. To me, the Cubs are the team the Phillies are going to play. That's who I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be Cubs Phillies in the first round.
Stroman is a little bit of a mess, and like, I know he just went on the IL. He's got some lower body issues, but I'll tell you what, like,
Steele's legit.
Like, and he's legit to the point where, like, I'm a big like, you like the no runs in the first inning bet? Like,
yeah, that's good.
It's a good one. The quick hitter, instant gratification or instant disaster. He's like money, and like I've over the year I've like gotten a chance to watch him pitch a lot, and I really like him.
Yeah,
he concerns me a little bit, and even like a guy like Hendricks, like that team is like okay.
Yeah, no, they are. They're not. That's not an easy. It's not an easy matchup.
You go back to that run differential, and you're like, holy smokes.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're going to play that team, do you want to play them in a ballpark like Wrigley, or do you want to play them here?
Yeah.
You want to play them here, right? So I mean, I think the Padres have a little bit tougher road. Their schedule is not easy. The Padres, this is just so you know that this is what I have it up because I knew we were going to talk about this.
Dodgers this weekend.
Dodgers for 4. It's a 4-game series. It carries over into Monday. Then it's a quick hitter out to Seattle to play 2 against the Mariners. Then they go to Arizona for 3. Then they come home and play Baltimore for 3, Arizona for 4, Miami for 3 before they go to Milwaukee for 3.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's a tough run, right? I mean, so the Padres aren't an automatic by any stretch, and it gets harder even after that. They get a quick break with St. Louis, but then it goes Giants, Phillies, Astros, Dodgers again. So it's a tough schedule for them.
Are you surprised? And I know that you said wait till August with these guys. Like, we've seen Miami just take a huge step back. They don't hit at all. Some of the starting pitching, the innings restrictions, certain guys are taking a little bit of a step back. Their bullpen since the All-Star break has been a disaster. I kind of watch Miami play, and like, they have some interesting bats at the top of that order. Like, I mean, they do have some guys, and we saw it this week that can do some damage, and you go, okay. Like, I think Miami isn't going to totally fall off the cliff, but like, do they come up short?
Yeah,
Yeah, probably.
I think they're the best of the teams that are just going to miss.
Right.
Arizona's got a better lineup, but their pitching isn't great.
Man, they've taken a massive step backwards. I like Arizona. I know we talked about this earlier, and you had expressed concerns about the lack of pitching depth, and they might not hold up. I'm surprised it's happened as quickly as it has with them. I thought that they would have a little bit more, but it kind of goes to one team that, because I feel like for the most part, you've really sort of had this right. And this isn't the first time. Like, I feel like when you look at the league as a whole, you're usually pretty good at the diagnostics of what's real, what's not. You've been kind of banging the drum against the Giants. And I just look at this and say, like, man, they don't hit. This is a lineup that I am not scared of in any capacity. The names in terms of the pitching staff don't like overwhelm you or totally spook you either, but they keep winning, and they keep winning close games. And I'm not trying to be a smart ass or be funny, but like at some point you say like, hey, Gabe Kapler and his staff, like, pretty nice job keeping this team in it. And they like look like they have some staying power. Like, I'm not saying that I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs or not, but like, they're pretty resourceful team. Like, they make the most of what they have, or at least they have to this point.
Yeah, they have, and they are a little bit of a surprise in that regard. I think that they're another team that, like the Marlins, will kind of hang around, but I just don't think that I don't think that they have enough there. Look, they had an opportunity, I think, at the deadline to add to that team and make it a playoff team, and they added nothing. What they got? AJ Pollock, who's hitting like 170 or whatever. That's all they added to that team. And then their GM, Farhan Zahidi, comes out and says, well, look at the trade deadline. All the people we're contending with, nobody got better. Like, really? Like, you honestly feel that way? That, like, the Brewers did some good stuff, right? They made some nice moves. I think the Phillies adding Lorenzen was a big addition. I think the Padres are a little bit better right now. The Cubs decided to push in as opposed to not, going. So these teams all look to me like better teams, and the Giants didn't do anything. Even the Marlins, for what it was worth, I mean, the players they added were trying. Look, they added power, right? And yeah, Bell and Berger. Right?
I do not want to see Bell again like this. He cannot escape him. He's not even that good.
No.
Like, against the Phillies, man, like, he always finds a way to be a problem. So
yeah. I mean,
Berger has a little bit of pop, and Robertson. I mean, I know he was a disaster this week, but like, nice veteran presence in the back of a leaky bullpen.
Yeah, all the teams that they're contending with all did stuff to improve, except for them. And so, like, I think that's going to hurt them. I think that they want to make pretend like nobody got better, but I think everybody else around them did.
I think that's fair. Well, so I think nice natural transition then to what happened this week with the trade deadline. And you said it. I mean, a lot of teams kind of made these incremental moves, these marginal moves, and they've upgraded themselves. But there wasn't the massive blockbuster. And it's weird. Like, even the Verlander and Scherzer trades, like, I just was like, whatever, who cares? Like, and maybe it's because they're in the AL Central, or I'm sorry, in the West, or wherever the hell they went, Texas and Houston, right?
Yeah.
Like, like, maybe like it's because I don't care about that race. Maybe it's because like I don't think that either of them are particularly that good anymore. Like, I don't know. Like, I guess that was a massive deal, but it just didn't really register with me. I think with the Phillies, like, you look at what they did, and Lorenzen was an instant difference maker for them. And I think really where you're going to see that show up is in October. Move. I don't know that you feel the impact of it so much right now, but I think it gives them so much more versatility in how they can deploy the staff once you get to a playoff series. And I think we need to talk about the ramifications of that trade. But in a perfect world, I would have liked to have seen an impact bat here. We've talked about it for months now. Like, the Phillies did not add that bat. And, I think it kind of crawls back to the point that, well, what was the impact bat they were going to add? Is Adam Duvall really going to be a difference maker here? Is a guy like Tommy Pham, who, for what it's worth, by the way, like, I've had multiple people tell me that he's not an awesome clubhouse guy. Like, right. I'm not going to come on here and emphatically say that he's a bad dude because I don't know him. So it's not for me to really make that point. But I actually had a former player that played with him, reach out to me and go like, he's not a dude that you want in your clubhouse. And like, for as much as like Nick Castellanos talks about like nobody cares more about one another and all that stuff, like just from this one player's viewpoint, that was not a fit. So if you're not shopping the Mark Kanas of the world, then like what was the move here to make? And so for that reason, like I'm not that I need to give the Phillies a pass, but I kind of go, okay,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I don't know if you read it, but last week before the deadline, my suggestion was let's not go for the big bat. If you're going to add to this team, add outfield defense. Of course, I was pushing hard for a guy that was not traded in Lane Thomas. That's who I thought would be the nicest addition because it was a balance between improved left field defense. Not that he's a superstar out there, but he's a solid defensive outfielder and a top of the order kind of guy who can get on base for you, right?
Makes you wonder what the ask was for him.
Yeah, it was probably too much. Yeah, and that was probably and that's why Dombrowski said he wasn't going to, give up on his top prospects for something that for a player like that, and that's fine. But in a sense, what they did here is they did exactly what I asked just from internal, and they basically are looking at it, and I think you're seeing it almost all the time now. Marsh is still going to play some games in center, but for the most part, he's now the left fielder, and they're going to have Rojas, and you're going to have Pache coming back in a couple weeks. These guys are going to play center field, and these guys are going to play in the outfield as the right-handed options. And yes, they're not power guys. They're not big-time on-base guys, although Rojas has been impressive so far in his limited role. And Pache, when he wasn't hurt, he was hitting well as well against lefties. But that's not why you're bringing them. That's not why you're using them. You're using them because they save you runs in the outfield. And I was asked, I went on Crossing Broadcast yesterday, and Kyle Pagan asked me, he said, do you have a problem with, Rojas being very lackadaisical, like with the way he runs after a ball? And I said, no, not at all.
You have a problem with Andrew Jones and the way that he used to run after a ball?
it's he's got such a good read that it looks like he's making it, he's making it easy. But that's just the talent that he has. Like, I have zero problem with that. It's not like he's out there being flamboyant, catching the ball behind his back or breadbasketing it or anything like that. He just glides, and it's like a gazelle, man. And, like that is going to make a huge difference to me because, like we said, the pitching is really, really good. That if you could provide defense behind that pitching and maybe save a running game, this makes up for what you're lacking on offense.
Right.
And then if these guys ever turn around and start hitting, holy hell, Bob, do we have a whole different conversation about this team?
I don't want to make this is a point that's been made a lot this week, and I think that we actually even said it on Monday. Before then, I heard it another 100,000 times. But there is this idea that you have Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Trea Turner. These are names. These are guys that have a track record. They've done it. And you can bring in an Adam Duvall. You can bring in your platoon. I can hit lefties, and I have an 880 OPS, and I'll add a little pop from the right side. And you can bring in that guy. But, like, if Trea Turner doesn't hit, if JT Realmuto doesn't get a little bit better, Bryce Harper doesn't – like, it won't matter. Like, you cannot mask that. And so let me put a new spin on this. Let me ask you a different question here, or a series of questions. Is JT Realmuto the Phillies catcher in 2024?
Great question. I still say yes. I don't think that they –
I don't think that, yeah. We should probably explore this. I thought I thought this was a simple one.
No, I didn't know why you were asking. You kind of
I mean, I'm going somewhere with it. I am.
But, but yes. I mean, he's going to be the guy in 2024. Yeah.
Is Trea Turner going to be the shortstop?
Yes.
Okay.
If you would have started with that one, I would have been. I've been following this path a little bit easier. But go ahead. Is
Bryson Stott going to be the second baseman?
Yes.
Sure. Is Bryce Harper going to be the first baseman?
That's a tough one. That I'm not 100% sure on, but I mean, he's going to be something. He might be the left fielder next year.
Okay. Is Nick Castellanos in left field then?
No. I think Harper might go to left.
Harper goes left. Castellanos stays in
just
right.
Keep Castellanos in right. Yeah.
Schwarber's your DH, and then Marsh is running around out there with the Paches and Rojas's of the world, or
yeah. So, I mean, something like that. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's always a chance that somebody gets moved somewhere, right?
Yeah. But one other question then: what about Alec Bohm? What do you do with him right now? Because is he a league average player, or is he an exciting 2-hole option for this team? Like, what is Alec Bohm, right?
It's interesting because so many people are getting excited about Bohm the way he's been hitting, and I'm not going to knock the guy. He's hitting 290, right? I mean, is 293 now. He's got his on base up almost to 350. He's almost at 800 OPS. The only thing that Alec Bohm doesn't do is provide you with pop, and that's a little bit disappointing because you kind of thought that would be part of his game as he got into this fourth year in the majors, that you thought the power would come, but he's shown that he can be a consistent hitter. He's shown that he can find his way on base. He's got a good approach at the plate. He's very good with runners in scoring position. And I don't think I think that he uses the whole field, right, Bob? So I think that is what makes him a valuable bat. But again, I can see that being something you say, well, maybe we can turn that into something else. Well, I get that ideology.
That's kind of where I'm ultimately going with this whole thing. Like, do the Phillies have money to spend this winter? Sure. Are there a ton of obvious free agents that I would circle and say, man, I hope the Phillies go out and get this player? Not really, no. And when I look at each of these guys on an individual basis, I say, well, yeah, I guess it's reasonable to expect that they would be back next year. But here's my point. This is not going to be the lineup next year. Like, the Phillies know that this lineup's not good enough, right? And they weren't able to address it in a meaningful way in the short term, but they're going to be forced to address it, I think, in a meaningful way beyond this season. And so I wonder if there is at least part of the consideration. And listen, if the deal wasn't there to be had, the right player wasn't there to be had for a reasonable price, you're not going to make the deal anyway. But to me, I'd rather save my prospect load and keep my flexibility with what I have and say, let's look at what happens this offseason and who becomes available and what conversations might we be able to have this offseason, because the Phillies aren't going to be able to just simply run it back with this group. Like, we could talk about Bryce regaining his power, another year removed from the surgery. We can talk about Trea Turner figuring it out. That I actually was going to be much more rude now I just said that, but figuring it out. Like, there's natural upgrades that can be made here internally, but I think that they're going to have to do something ultimately to reconstruct this roster. And it almost feels like, hey, the opportunity wasn't here to do it right now, but this winter, you bet we're going to look at how to do it. And they're going to have to.
Yeah, they are. I think they are. And I'll tell you the one name that we didn't mention that I think is going to be the most valuable asset to them from an already major league player on the roster is Brandon Marsh. And I think if Marsh continues to have the season that he's having, finishes with an OPS over 800, right? Knowing that you have good outfield depth in the minor league system and one guy who's already playing for you at the major league level, that could be a position that you move a player like Marsh to get you something else.
That'd be a tough pill for Phillies fans to swallow. I feel like he's become,
I agree,
one of the most popular players on this team.
Yeah, because of the personality. But in a lot of ways, it's a lot like remember where Jason Worth was when he became like one of the best players better players on the team, and then all of a sudden they wouldn't sign him, and because he went to Washington with that big money contract, right? I'm not saying Brandon Marsh is Jason Worth, but he's having that breakout year, and it's like, okay, this is a spot that we have a lot of talent behind him. Can we upgrade somewhere else by moving Brandon Marsh?
I just don't know how much more you can push your chips in, like, on this group of aging guys, though. Like, I almost want a Brandon Marsh.
I hear you.
as like a breath of fresh air to like if the Phillies could, if you got Dave Dombrowski into a room and said, hey Dave, this offseason you could free yourself of either Kyle Schwarber or Nick Castellanos, would you like to do that? He would do it. Like,
I agree, but I do think that they both have value to this team over the next couple of years.
they do. I'm not saying that they don't have value, but I'm just saying, hey, if you could remove the 20+ million from the books, given the holes in the swings of both guys, like they are a little bit redundant in that way now. Like, and I think that there's leadership qualities and intangibles that each of them bring that makes this thing work to a degree. Like, I'm not trying to downplay that, but this roster feels, and I said this to you a few weeks ago, and it's something I think is going to become a solidified take of mine, which is like, I respect this group. I respect the willingness to keep plugging away when things aren't going well. They don't quit. Like, that's great. They feel like a tired group to me, though. Like, they feel old when I watch them play. Like, I feel like the energy is inconsistent because it's this. They kind of just like
they're predictable.
Like, it just doesn't have a lot of zip sometimes.
Yeah. Well, look, let's be honest, Bob. The reason that this lineup is having the problems that it's having is because of Trea Turner. Like, if Turner is Turner,
we've arrived 31 minutes in. Here we are.
I mean, we're being fair. I mean, it got to be fair to the other guys. If Turner is Turner at the top of this lineup, where is everyone else?
Right.
At this point, like, you know, Schwarber, even though he's walking a ton. By the way, I wanted to just share this stat while we're on it. In his last 13 games, Kyle Schwarber is batting 103, but his on base percentage is 400.
Amazing.
He's walked 20 times in 60 plate appearances. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, in his last 7 games, he's 3 for 21. He's hitting 143, but his on base percentage is 471.
It's wild. But
I don't know that you'll ever see a player like this again.
No, it's craziness. It's absolute craziness. But the thing of it, so he's got a great eye, right? And now you see why they want him to bat leadoff. I've kind of come around to that a little bit, just because you don't have anyone else to kind of fit that bill at this point.
Right.
So I'm okay with it. But he had a bat in front of Turner for much of the season, so he knew he had to try and get on base. And so pitches that he's now spitting on with other guys batting behind him that are close, he was swinging at before.
Right.
So, I'm not going to try and sit here and tell you that Kyle Schwarber batting 103 in the last 13 games is a good thing. But the fact that he's walked 20 times in his last 60 plate appearances is a direct correlation to the fact that he's now got a bat behind him that teams don't think is an automatic out.
So let's talk about Trea Turner again. I tweeted out on Wednesday night that I'm just running out of things to say about this. Like, I don't know what else to say. And then 20 minutes later, a ground ball that Josh Bell hits goes through his, backhand, in the ball game, basically. I don't know what else to say. I really don't. I don't know if he's going to recover. One thing I'm kind of getting tired of hearing people say, though, is that, well, next year he's obviously going to be much better. Like, he'll definitely come back from this. Like, that's something that people say to, it's like it's a reaction to the WIP hot take, which is we have to overreact to everything. Should we get out of the contract this moment? But now I think we see a lot of people go to the opposite extreme. Like, well, he's still such a great player and he certainly will bounce back. We don't know that. We have no idea if he will bounce back. You do not know that.
No, you don't know. I guess the only thing that I'll say, since I'm more of that mindset, that Trea Turner is not going to be a 235 hitter, low on base for 11 years for the Phillies. Like, I don't think that's going to be the case. And the only reason I say that, Bob, is that I don't have any frame of reference in the sport of baseball where a player was as good as he was in his career at this age, just suddenly
For
not
that
being
long.
that good
Yeah.
and not recovering. Like, guys have had bad seasons. Like, you can go back through history and find guys who are star players who just had a shitty year and they just chalk it up to a shitty year. But their track record usually gets them back to where they are after that shitty year, right? Assuming they're not, at the end of their career, at the end of the line. If when you're 29, 30 years old, yeah, you usually bounce back. So with that in mind, not being able to really pinpoint another player who's had this kind of precipitous drop off at that age and never recovering from it. Without that kind of, so to me, the odds are highly in favor of Trea Turner being better next year and beyond. But I do agree that in the framework of an actual season, it's sometimes just isn't going to happen. Like, this is who he is for 2023, and it sucks. It's terrible. It's not it's not at all good for the Phillies. But if you can drag him through and get through it, I think by 2024 you have a different player.
I feel for him on a human level because, as it's been written and said, he cares and he faces the music and he takes accountability, and like, that's all fine and well, and he's done that throughout the year, but it's not translating. It's not yielding any results, and you hope for him and you hope for the Phillies and their fans that it eventually turns, but I guess, like, while I applaud and I know a lot of people have said, like, we need to give him a standing ovation on Friday night. Like, first of all, that kind of feels fake and phony to me. Like, the Alec Boehm thing was cool because it sort of happened naturally, right? Like, it wasn't an organized effort. It just sort of, to me, I feel like I don't really want to hear anymore that he cares and that, like, he's taking extra hacks in the batting cage after his 0 for 5. Like, I don't care, man. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that's what you should be doing. You should care. You should feel embarrassed by what's happening. You should feel like you're letting people down because you are. And, like, credit to Nick Castellanos. I read his comments to Matt Gelb, and like, that's great that Nick is got his back publicly and that they all love Trey and that they're a band of brothers. It's awesome. But, like, this is a results-oriented business. And I actually think to what you wrote is the correct call here. Trey, go home for a week, man. Like, I think that's where we're at. I don't need to see Trea Turner in the cage taking 60 hacks after the game. And one other thing on that. If you're in a bad space, like, and Major League Baseball is not high school baseball, that's fine. It's not youth baseball. It's not developmental baseball. But if I have a guy in the cage that's struggling, and this is something I've a lot of coaches feel this way. If I have a guy that's really going through it and, he has a mechanical issue or the confidence isn't there and he wants to just swing and swing and swing. Hey, give me tee, give me soft toss, get me in the cage. Let me hit on the field. Let me hit in the tunnel so I don't have to worry about where the ball's going necessarily. Let me really focus on this one thing. A lot of times you just compound your mechanical issue. You continue, like, those extra swings lead you to press even harder. Like, there is not a correlation between I took more swings and I figured this out. And every player is different. Every player gets out of slumps in a different way. But there is nothing about his body language, the way that he's speaking right now, what he's electing to do, that signals to me that he's about to figure this out. Now, he might this weekend against a dreadful Royals pitching staff. Maybe he does, and maybe that gets him going. And I hope it does. But I think a full shutdown here where you just say, Trey, we're not playing you until next weekend. I think that that's your last resort, and he may not want to do it, but I think that they are very much nearing the point where that's going to be their only option if he cannot get it going here in the next few days.
Look, I think it's interesting that you say that because Dombrowski goes on WIP yesterday morning, and when he was asked about Turner, and Joe DeCamera said to him, he says, well, what can you do with a guy when he's dealing this, and Dombrowski giving kind of the cliche answers, but then he did say, we sat him a day. Maybe the next thing is you sit him, a couple of days or more than a couple of days. And then Thompson says in that story, I think it was, he said yesterday to the writers that are down in Miami, it's something that we'll if we have to give them a couple of days, that might be something that's on the plate. They have to. Now, they might not do it today. I think this weekend would be ideal because you could still beat the Royals, right? When it doesn't matter. Like I said on the Crossing broadcast yesterday, like, we can go out there and play for the Phillies and they could still have a chance to beat the Royals. So like this is a series to me. And you'd also prevent him from having to deal with the negativity of coming off of that Miami series, and the potential for the booing in the crowd and everything. Because if the Phillies go out and
I think this fan base is going to cheer him tonight. I don't think that they're necessarily going to stand up in 43,000 and swing rally towels, but I do not think that he's going to get that booed off the field treatment.
No, but I'll tell you what I think it's going to be, and this is what I wrote. I don't think it's going to be as soon as he's announced to come up to bat, but I think every non-hit is going to be booed.
Yeah.
That's what I think he's going to get. I think he comes up to bat whenever, with second inning, third inning, whenever it is, wherever he's at in the line, he's still batting 8, whatever. And then he hits, he either strikes out or hits that lazy fly ball to right field or whatever. He's going to get booed. And that's just what's going to happen because the fans are not happy. Yes, there are people who want to support him and you might get some cheers, but I don't think so. I think what you do is you let the team win these games this weekend, right? Plow through. Now all of a sudden he comes back Monday against Washington, and the Phillies are riding, a 4-game winning streak, having won 6 and 7 or whatever the case might be, and there's some good vibes about the team again. And I think that the booing kind of falls off. It's like it goes away. It's not a thing anymore. I just think that this would be the smart time to do. If you're going to do it, this would be the smart time to do it. Yeah.
Well, we'll see on that. It's probably the storyline of the weekend going in right now. And it is going to reach a point where, let's just say it doesn't get better. And I guess I talked about this with the lineup in general. Like if they're not hitting, but you get to October and you just kind of hope maybe for a series for 3 weeks, they can figure it out. What about Trea Turner? Is there any scenario in which he's healthy and you say, okay, it's not about trying to reset you anymore. It's not about trying to get your head right, but it's just about, we have to play the best guys. And is there some world where Edmundo Sosa, which I can't believe I'm saying this, but I want to at least explore this ahead of time. If we get to the end of September and he just stays on this path where he's totally lost, do you start to think about maybe removing him from the lineup, not to clear his head, but just based on performance? I would say no. And I would pray to God that if he's still there in October, that you play him in the postseason and hope that, hey, Trey, you were never going to get your 70 points back on your batting average with one swing. You were never going to lift your OPS by 150 points. You were never going to earn that contract with one swing in the regular season. But now you can. You can undo this whole thing now with one swing. Get it all back now.
Just look at a guy like Rhys Hoskins last year, right? At how, he was the bane of the fans' existence for this franchise. And then he has the bat spike home run against Atlanta, and now he's a Philly hero forever and ever. He's beloved. Gene Segura, who was just a guy, gets that crazy ass hit against the Cardinals, and then has a really awesome game against the Braves back at Citizens Bank Park. And now people want the Phillies to bring him back, despite the fact that he has a 535 OPS over, 4 months of a season and doesn't have a job anywhere. Right. I mean, it's that kind of thing.
Were you able to watch the game yesterday?
Yeah.
When Sosa got hurt, I thought to myself,
here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go, Segura.
But not when he got hurt, but when he got hit.
Yeah. I know what you meant.
I thought to myself, oh my God, this is going to happen.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, you can undo an entire bad season. I mean, even Castellanos last year, he makes those sliding catches in the playoffs in right field, the saves games, and that I think that catapults him into the good start to this year, and then being the more outgoing guy, and everybody now likes Nick and Liam and his son and all that cool stuff that's going on. It's awesome, and I think that all you can have plays in the playoffs that catapult you forward, no doubt about it.
Aaron Nola tonight.
But I want to say one more thing on that.
Go ahead.
Just because you had brought up Sosa. That said, if Turner is still Trea Turner in the playoffs and is not doing anything, he's giving you nothing, I would still play him. But I wouldn't be so against the idea of, hey, 7th inning, put Sosa out there at shortstop.
I'm all for to kind of, I think I'm with you on this. I'm all for just letting it ride, taking the potential of a turnaround at the plate. But if he cannot, the one caveat here is if he cannot catch a ground ball on a consistent basis, like if what we saw in Miami this week is something that continues to happen, then I might reassess the way I feel about this. Like, at minimum, I need you to make the plays that a major league shortstop should make. Yes. I don't need you to be a Gold Glover. I don't necessarily need you to hit 340, but I need to know that you're not going to sink me because what's happening at the plate is now transferring to what's happening in the field. Like, you have to show me like some, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not mental stability, but like the competence to know that like I don't have to worry about a meltdown.
Right.
Like, and that's where we got to make sure that this thing ends,
Mm-hmm.
So what I was saying here is that you have Aaron Nola this weekend getting the ball. He was obviously terrible last weekend, and the same old story. He was cruising along a little bit. He didn't get a lot of defensive help. He didn't help himself. He's the other guy in this whole thing, because I want to tie this into what happened at the trade deadline. Like, I don't see any scenario in which the Phillies make a playoff series and Aaron Nola is not taking the ball in game 2, right? Like, I don't think that's going to change regardless. Like, if he goes out and just continues to have the season that he's had to this point, I still think he's a game 2 starter. But I want to break this into two things here. One, do you have any new opinion or new assessment of Aaron Nola? We know historically you're not, I don't want to say defender, like you're not an apologist, but you look at his body of work, and I think that you still skew to the positive on what Aaron Nola is or can be again.
Yeah.
And then the second part of that is you bring in Michael Lorenzen, and now you have the 6 starters. We know they're probably going to roll through the month of August with a 6-man rotation unless somebody gets hurt. What are they going to do with this rotation come October because of this trade? So I want to kind of tackle both of these topics.
Yeah, and I think it's a good question, Bob. And here's what, sometimes you have to kind of look deeper into it. And I know I tend to be the guy who always references the schedule, but I think that, or I know that when baseball teams make certain decisions, they are looking ahead at the schedule in a lot of instances and piecing these things together. So by making this trade for Lorenzen and having him pitch yesterday and giving Nola the extra day's rest, yes, we've heard all this stuff about Nola with 5 days rest. He's so much better than he is with anything else. But that would be, I think any pitcher would kind of be that way, right? I mean, look at Ohtani. Ohtani pitches on 5 days rests all the time. He never pitches with less than 5 days rest. So this is a thing that benefits pitchers, of course. But this is what, if you stick with the 6-man rotation through August, now, obviously September could change things, but through August, Aaron Nola's next starts are Kansas City, Washington twice, St. Louis. Are you trying to get Aaron Nola right?
Yeah.
Is that what the plan is, right? You're trying to get Aaron Nola right. 3 of them, of course, at home. Only the one road start would be at Washington. I think that's what they're trying to do. I agree with you. He's still going to be the guy in the top of the rotation. He's going to be 1 or 2 in the playoffs, depending on how the end of the season goes and who you need for what starts at the end of the year. He's still going to be there. But I do think that this is let's try and get this guy back to where we need him to be.
Right.
and make him pitch against some bad teams in the month of August. They got him away from Miami. They got him away from Toronto. They got him away from the Giants.
That being said, he also just pitched against the Pirates. And
yes, it did have a. That was a yes. That was a bad.
Not trying to be a dick, just making a point.
No, but I'm saying, I mean, look, and the thing, look, the Pirates game, he was not good, but it was exacerbated by bad defense behind him too. Let's be honest, right? I mean, he probably is responsible for 4 of the 7 runs that he gave up. And that's not good enough because he only pitched 4 and 2/3 innings. So 4 runs in 4 and 2/3 innings is bad. It's not a good pitching performance. But it also wasn't 7 runs on Aaron Nola. It was 4 on Aaron Nola. But nevertheless, yeah, he's got to get right. And the second part of your question, what does this do for the postseason or going towards October? I'm not convinced that even though they're saying, well, we can bounce Michael Lorenzen into the bullpen, blah, 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 blah. I'm not convinced that that's happening. I really am not. If Lorenzen pitches look, you saw what he did yesterday, right? And he's been pitching really well for the Tigers leading up to this. Yeah. And against some good teams, too. I think he shut, against the Rays? He gave up 0 runs. And the Rays aren't the best hitting team in baseball, but they're still pretty good. I don't know, man. I think he might end up in the rotation, and a guy like Ranger or Suarez or a guy like Taijuan Walker, and obviously, Sanchez is another guy. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. I think there's some internal competition, let's just put it that way, for the playoffs over who's going to start and who's going to be out of the bullpen.
I absolutely agree. If you look at Michael Lorenzen's last 7 games, he has a 2.25 ERA and a 0.88 WHIP. I would tell you this, that I have some concern. I don't want to say I'm sounding the alarm. I don't want to say I'm out or this is a huge problem. I don't want to, I guess, overemphasize the opinion here, but Ranger Suarez does concern me a little bit. He was not good in July, and I know that he scattered 10 hits over 6 innings the other night, but it's a bad Miami team, left a lot of runners on base. Credit to him for bearing down in key spots and escaping jams, but he was in the middle of the plate a lot, and he's looked very hittable now, really his last 6 times out. And I don't know that it's a slam dunk foregone conclusion that Ranger Suarez is starting a game 3 for you. And Taijuan Walker, kind of on a similar vein here, he was not great in the month of July. He was fantastic in the month of June. He was not great in July, and then he comes out the other night, and the velocity's down 4 miles an hour, and he pitches through it, and then he gets to the end of the start, and the velocity kind of ticks back up. And he's been a little bit of a weird study all year, trying to figure out where he's at from start to start, physically and mentally. And he's won 13 games for them. He's been a net positive for the Phillies, and I applaud that. But am I absolutely convinced that if he continues to be a little bit inconsistent here over the final 2 months, that the Phillies would say, we trust you in a game 4? I don't know that to be true. So I do think that this very much is a competition. I think it is very much open, and I would almost I'm kind of leaning towards the idea that they might want to use Ranger Suarez much the way they did last postseason, where there's 2 innings. We need to block off a 3-inning run here, where it's not long man, it's not mop up, but we're going to get some length out of a guy that comes in and it's sort of like that piggyback option. There's no doubt in my mind that is very much why the Phillies in part made this trade. Yes, you're getting a good starting pitcher, but yes, I think it gives them a ton of options of how they can attack October.
I agree, Bob. And the thing of it is, when you look at Suarez as a potential guy for that bullpen in that role that you were just describing, the one thing that you really like about him, even though he's not been great this past month, is he's unflappable.
Mm-hmm.
He just is unflappable. And so you bring him into a spot where that is such a high leverage situation because it's just because it's the playoffs in general. And then it's a high leverage in the game kind of situation. I think Suarez has the right mental approach.
All of that slow heartbeat shit that you hear them talk about all the time, that matters more in the playoffs.
It does.
If that is one of your attributes, if that's something that you possess, that stuff plays up more in October than it does in the middle of July.
Agree.
And for that reason, I could see him being a guy in that spot that they go back to. They had success with it last year, and I sort of think ultimately that's where this is going to go. We'll see.
I do too. I do too. I know Sanchez has pitched great, and he may end up staying on the roster as a long guy in the bullpen. But I do think ultimately your 4 starters in the playoffs are going to be Wheeler, Nola, Lorenzen, and Walker.
Any issue with the decision to DFA Vasquez and keep Kobe?
No, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I'm not a big Dylan Covey fan, right?
I tweeted out the other day.
I know
he's appeared. Really, forget the ERA and the numbers because they're all low leverage spots. But I think my point is he's pitched once every 6.5 days since he's been here. Like, they don't use him. So if that's really what he's here to do, is to just knock out 3-4 innings, or if your offense screws around and can't blow a game open, or your bullpen blows a lead 4 times, like, then Dylan Covey might have to pitch in an important spot like he did on Wednesday night. But other than that, he's never going to see a game. I know Rob said that the other night that he might start pitching in more high leverage situations. I'll believe that when I see it. But for what he's asked to do, he's actually done a fine job with it. Like, let's not act like Andrew Vasquez. Like, seriously, like, let's not act like Andrew Vasquez is some high upside reliever. He hasn't been great lately. He came in on Sunday. You want to talk about blowing a game late? That was non-competitive. It was, here you go. Here's a spinner, middle of the plate, ball game. And everyone was so pissed at everything else offensively and the fact that they were playing horrible defense that nobody even blinked that he came in and just threw slop up there and it got piped. So he's going to surface. He's going to be in someone else's bullpen. He did a nice job for the Phillies. No knock against him, but like, let's not act like, oh my God, the Phillies just.
No, and it also doesn't matter because I honestly don't think either one of them are part of your postseason roster.
No way. No way. But credit to Covey. I mean, he the other night did his job. He actually came in and
did what he was supposed to do.
He did save that game the other night if they make the play they need to make. It's like, I'm not sitting here telling you that he should be part of a playoff roster or anything, but he's not been as bad as the fan base wants to.
I think you keep Covey ahead of Vasquez just because the pitches that he has, the stuff that he has in comparison. Vasquez throws 80% sliders. That's it. That's all he's got.
All right. You want to go with a one last?
I do have one last thing here.
A root canal this morning that I have to go to. It's very exciting.
Bob, you're getting old, man. Like, all these things that are happening to you.
37 going on 60.
News came out. I don't know if it was last night or might have been last night. I guess it was last night. Tampa Bay Rays put Shane McClanahan on a DL or IL, with forearm tightness. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This year alone, and the Rays have a history of this. Andrew Kitteridge, Tommy John surgery. Shane Baz, Tommy John surgery. Jeffrey Springs, Tommy John surgery. Josh Fleming, elbow inflammation. Shane McClanahan, forearm tightness. Drew Rasmussen, elbow surgery for the internal brace. Garrett Clevenger, I think his is a knee injury, but nevertheless, another pitcher with an injury. And they have a history of doing this to their pitchers. Do we have to take it? Should baseball be taking a look at this and say, Tampa, what the hell's going on down there? And stop, because year after year after year, they just trot out new pitchers. Doesn't matter, and they all get hurt, and then they end up going somewhere else. And then they bring somebody else in, and they all get hurt and go somewhere else. Like,
what do you suspect is going on down there? Do you think that the development and like they're working on like throwing certain? Is it like too many?
Well, who knows? Is it the kind of pitches that they're asking these guys to throw? Is it the way that they're developing their pitchers? Is it the way that they're using their pitchers between starts, between they're on their off days, like what their throwing programs are? Like, what are they like? The Rays always try to make it out to be that we're so far ahead of everybody else with our thought process and thinking the game, and this is why we're going to be successful with a low budget team. And to their credit, kudos. Hey, guess what? You win a bunch of games. You make the playoffs every year or almost every year, and you do it without spending a lot of money. Great, good for you, Moneyball Rays. But every pitcher that seems to come through there has major injuries.
I don't know, but I will tell you that around the game, like a lot of younger guys are learning to throw cutters. That's become a point of emphasis for teams, and there are some repercussions to that. So I don't know if that's what's going on here. I don't know if there's an emphasis on that particular pitch. a lot of the people that dive into pitching analytics want you to throw cutters. Like, even look at Andrew Painter, right? Like, that was a storyline back in February. Oh, he's been playing around with a cutter. He's trying to implement it. And again, I'm not saying that there's any correlation between him learning and trying to toy with that pitch and what happened to him. I have no clue. But, could that be a thing around the game and in Tampa? Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Were they one of the original Driveline teams?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean,
just throwing that out there. Yeah.
I mean, I think that there could be something to that. There could be a tie in there. And certainly when you're talking about the Rays of all teams, when you start to, you think about the Rays, you think about the analytics, the efficiency, financial efficiency, maybe there is a correlation there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for
There
Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel. Make sure that you're following us on Twitter. You can follow the show at Up Phillies. You can follow Anthony on Twitter, or X. Is that what it's called now? X.
I refuse.
At Ant Sanphilly. And you can follow me at Bob_Wankel. Make sure that you're checking us out wherever you get your shows and on YouTube. And we will talk to you on Monday.